Hello, welcome to our webinar today. My name is Mine Forner and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager of NetGuardians. Today we continue our webinar series on the topic of compliance of the future, controlled digitalization. So you will discover what controlled digitalization is and how it will change bankers' life. Before we begin, I would like to remind you a few things. Your phones have been muted for the audio portion of this webinar. And you need to just call in using computer. You will see it on the under the quick start window on the left-hand side of the screen. So you just have to click on there and then call in using computer to connect to audio. And this is a live webinar, so we want that it's interactive. So please ask your questions if you have any questions using the chat feature, and we will address most of the questions, all of the questions at the end of the webinar if the time is allowing us. If there are any questions remaining, we will get back to you by email. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions. Let's make this webinar interactive. It's always very valuable for us and for other participants as well. And we are recording this webinar at the moment, and we will send you the recording after the webinar, along with the presentation slides. So you will have all the slides as well together with the recording. So you don't have to worry about the slides, take your notes and everything. Now I have the pleasure to introduce you to our speaker today, Joel Winteregg. Well, Joel is NetGuardians CEO and co-founder. He's from Switzerland. He's from here, so we have our headquarters here in Switzerland. And actually, it was Joel's own research that led to the prototype of NetGuardians intelligent software. So his own research led to the birth of NetGuardians and software today. He's an experienced software engineer as well as certified information systems security professional. And last but not the least, he's a pro windsurfer. So when he has time remaining, he's enjoying the wind and the surf. So without further ado, I let Joel continue with his presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining this webinar. Very happy to be able to present you a little bit about controlled digitalization. I won't speak too much about windsurfing today, even if the background screen looks like a pleasant place for water, but a bit too cold for windsurfing, I guess. So before looking at the future of compliance, let me look at the past with a friend, David, who's a nice guy living in Geneva, you know, a nice place, cold in the winter, not too bad in the summer, working for a nice commercial bank in Geneva. So he's a compliance officer, having his family around Geneva since 5 years in this bank. And I just looked at his agenda 5 years ago. So luckily, Outlook keeps all your audit trails of your meetings, and you can easily look at 2011. His agenda was a little bit like that, some risk committee meetings, anti-money laundering, having some reviews with relationship managers, and so on. But since a few years, his life is a little bit different, not due to family reasons, but mainly due to regulation reasons. Basically, every month a new regulation is coming out from regulators. FINMA is the Swiss one, MAS, for instance, in Singapore, CSSF in Luxembourg, and many other around the world. And his agenda looks like this type of planning today. A lot of meetings, no time to follow up on investigation, just projects and projects around KYC, around investment suitability, around data leakage, all these cyber risk and cyber crime that are raising up. So it's not only due to regulation, but also due to all the losses his commercial bank is having nowadays. So his agenda looks like very crazy now in regard of all the follow-ups and meetings he gets. So no time for investigation and what I can say real work, making sure the bank is compliant. So now, as he was working in a big retail shop before, he is just thinking that this governance risk and compliance tool they acquire to manage compliance will soon need more people than just to run the bank. There are so many projects, so many information to consolidate for compliance needs. He's just feeling like he's 10 years ago in this retail factory working on SAP projects where you need plenty of people to input valid data to make sure that the software provider needed the output you need. And the GRC tool his bank just acquired looks like a little bit like that, because nowadays you need so many people to report things from the first line of defense and so on. So let's have a look to regulatory compliance. I'm sure you all know about it. I won't go into details for that. But spendings are huge because banks have no choice for that. Fines are not huge, they're crazily huge. It's billions banks have to pay if there are some breaches into the internal control and so on. And the crazy thing is that a lot of this work is paperwork. It's done manually, and pressure is growing, need of control is growing, and basically it's still paper-based. So the only way to grow is hiring new people, and that's why you can find out 3,000 compliance job advertisements currently on the web. So let's look at a way to make it easier, control digitalization. With the digitalization word, we think a lot about front office, customer experience, and so on. But nowadays, with big data and so on, you can really reuse this type of technology for some more back office activities around compliance, but to make it painless and to avoid such a big spending on compliance. And that's where I want to drive you today into that presentation to highlight how David could really leverage that to avoid hiring 300 people just to maintain and to fill his GRC tool to have some risk dashboard, key risk indicator available. So what do we mean by control digitalization? We mean making sure the first line of defense can easily report incidents, have pre-filled incidents. They don't have to do everything manually, to have a lot of support from software around them, and to make sure all this big amount of data the bank is having is automatically used to detect strange behavior, to detect compliance breaches, and to avoid having people to print thousands of documents to find out by sampling some potential compliance breaches. So basically, we are looking at streamlining the tree line of defense through continuous monitoring and continuous auditing, making sure we make the life easier of the first line of defense, making sure we don't work by samplings, we work real time, and nowadays with all these cyber fraud and cyber risk, that's a key factor to bring proactivity into operational risk, and to make sure that auditors have a very quick view on what is going on, what incidents are investigated, what issues are currently handled, and to avoid doing 200 control testing while they can just check if people are following up on the control output because they are just done automatically, and you just need to validate them if it's a real case or if it's just maybe a behavior that is strange but not related to a compliance breach. Feel free also to ask a question on the chat, and I can always come back. We're gonna spend a bit of time at the end of the presentation to go through them. So let's look at the first line of defense on controlled digitalization. So one possible traditional processes, we saw that on a customer side, basically, where people are inputting a lot of transactions during the day. At the end of the day, they have to print all the transactions on some papers. They are printing the status on another system of these related transactions, if they went through the SWIFT gateway, if there are some errors, if there are some mismatch into maybe the type of transactions and so on. Then they are looking at them manually on the paper. They are clipping that together, putting in some big files, and investigations are done through phone calls to back office team, to the team managing securities, to the team managing funds and stuff like that. So a lot of paperwork, manual work. Where we bring digitalization and where we believe we can really earn a lot of time and a lot of money, basically it's through digitalization. So avoiding printing all these documents, avoiding doing manual review. All of these can be done real time because you just print data that is already available in your core banking, in your portfolio management system, and so on. So you don't need to print it if, for instance, the controls are just run automatically. The logic, the business logic behind is just one of these caps you can see here on the screen that is plugged on a big data platform that runs the control for you. So the business user will just check the exception. You won't go through the 348 transactions he's got today. He will just look at the 5 violations, the 5 hits that are basically that need some follow-ups, some further investigation. And then investigation could be even driven through digitalization because all the data are available. So even the investigation team can really quickly validate or not the exception or the issue that was raised by the business. So it gives a lot of confidence on control, and it avoids sampling, and it avoids long and very expensive reviews that are currently conducted by business, some head of branches, for instance, some head of business units, and so on. What is in control digitalization for the second line of defense? So let's have a look, for instance, to David live. Today, he's having a very nice GRC tool, like the SAP solution for risk, but then he needs an army of business people putting control findings on the GRC solution. There is a lot of data feeds, but at the end, all the input he's using in his nice dashboard for his executive committee are coming from manual input. So his dashboards are as good as the people inputting data on the GRC tool. It's a lot of time, so business is again spending a lot of time putting control finding. They have to do again manual reviews. It's a lot feeling based because one branch manager from branch A is thinking that transaction reversal is a high risk. The same manager from branch C does not care at all about transaction reversal. So it's a lot of feeling based, it's not exhaustive, and it is not real time at all. So with digitalization, process around the second line of defense, the goal is to bring only real-time data to make sure that business users who are doing first line of defense control does not need army of people doing that, because at the end, we just look at exception. You don't have to review all the transaction. The first line of defense does not have to review all the transaction, and you are just looking at the exceptions. So it's a lot of time saving, it's real time, and it helps on preventing risk. Because you are real time, you get tactical dashboards available for maybe not just the risk manager, but all the risk team who wants to bring proactivity in risk mitigation. So through real-time dashboards, so I would say more tactical information, you get alerted very quickly, you can investigate very quickly, you get directly the finding of your business users, and you can easily investigate and prevent fraud before it happens, because you get all the tactical information you need to get alerted, to investigate, and to catch the fraudster, for instance, in that case, before the transaction is leaving the bank. Same things on compliance needs. You will be able to see compliance breaches, to quickly investigate, because you get all the data coming from your IT system available that are supporting now the first line of defense, as we saw earlier, but also now the risk management side, because all this data is also available for them for more prevention activity. We spoke about big data, and let me tell you, nowadays is not just a buzzword. It works very well, I agree. Maybe a few years back, it was a very sexy buzzword for many vendors, but nowadays it really works. The good thing is that you can do analytics on a huge amount of data sets. You can look at trends, you can do profiling, but the key aspect is still number one, data capture. If you have poor quality, you have poor controls. So you will still need your first line of defense teams, so your business teams, to do manual control if the data you find in IT system is poor. Good thing is that on the banking industry, everything or a lot of information is available in the core banking. The information is clean, very relevant, as it is the one to manage and to do the transactions. So we are capturing data very close to the core banking, making sure we got value-added data to run control through our analytics platform that look at behavior, that provide dashboard investigation and notification. And the last steps then is more exception handling, findings handling, making sure teams can share about exception, the investigation team can directly have information from the first line of defense when a strange activity is detected. So making sure your three lines of defense works in a smooth way, very easily, not through emails, through a standard web platform that quickly enable investigation. It's a lot of talk, so I propose we have a real look at real-life examples. How does it work through a demo, and to basically show you how you can really leverage this type of technology to support your compliance and risk activity. So in that example, we're going to go through Shirley Life. She is the head of district branches for a big retail bank. So she does not care at all about risk. I mean, not at all, but basically she just needs to do some first line of defense controls, that risk management is asking, that is part of her day-to-day activity. She needs to spend 10% of her time looking at violations from her team. Before that, she was doing that all manually, reviewing tons and tons of paper, reviewing tons and tons of transactions, and today she just got the opportunity to use a platform that enables her to see the violation. So she's first line of defense, so she will just log on the case manager that will enable her to basically follow up on the violation that were automatically detected. So on the case manager, she's got a view on all the branches of her district. She can see every branches, what is going on. So branch B, you see 4 violation. Branch C, just one strange employee that seems to be a junior. Is doing inquisitive employee violation, meaning he's starting screening all dormant accounts in the bank. That's maybe a behavior that she needs to focus on. Or if you look at branch F, you can see that a lot of multiple withdrawals were done on a customer by Omar. So again, that's a compliance violation or an anti-fraud control. She needs to investigate that quickly. I can see that she's got 13 open cases. I think she should connect a bit more often than once a day. But let's look at this one, violation of the 4 eyes. So every day she have to look at 13 violations. She does not need anymore to review 300 pages of paper or to go to 20 screens to look at strange activities. Controls are run automatically. This control is coming from cybercrime, identity theft. It was raised by an employee she knows very well, who is Peter, and it seems on that transaction ID, he was able to input and authorize his own transaction. So you get this information here. So now she finds it a little bit suspicious, so she will just put a note and she will say, okay, I never asked Peter to do so. Please investigate. So she can just do a little bit of sorting, making sure now she wants an investigation, is not just a false positive. So Michiko, who's part of the risk team and investigation team, will need to investigate a little bit more on that. So basically now, on branch B, she just gets 3 other control violations to review. So let's leave a little bit now Shirley out of the game, and let's look now at Michiko Frisbee, who is our operational risk manager. He's also conducting investigation. He's working with David, who's a risk manager, who's looking more at the big trends and reports for the executive committee. So now let's look at Michiko day-to-day activity. So we will also log on here on the case manager with his own username and password. And now he will just see the investigation he needs to conduct. So he don't see every branches, he don't see all this noise that Shirley is cleaning every day to remove false positive. Maybe Peter one day will just authorize a transaction because he was asked by Shirley to do so in the hurry for very VIP customers. So like that, Michiko, don't worry about these type of transactions that were approved. But basically now, he's got the view of this violation. So same information as Shirley, and he's got the note of Shirley that is asking to do an investigation. So He can easily communicate with Shirley through the tool. Once he's following up his investigation, he can just edit, put his own notes saying, okay, I'm doing it right now. So it enables communication. You get also notification by emails. So it's very easy to follow up on investigation. So now Michiko needs to get a little bit deeper to understand what Peter did. So he just click on here, and now he's getting into the control automation software that's enabling him to do forensic investigation. So basically here, he's just focusing on the transaction ID here that Shirley said it was weird. And here he can exactly see that Peter did some access on the fund transfer application on the core banking, that Peter started to input the record, he did a modification, he looked at it, and yes, it's right, he authorized the record. So here you can directly see that 10 minutes later, that day, he was able to authorize his own record. So it highlights the case, and it enables now Michiko to have a look to the transaction side, to focus now on the transaction ID that was highlighted here. And you can easily see now it was a Swiss franc transaction. It was related to this customer ID. You know, in Switzerland, we love IDs and no customer name. Maybe that's due to our past history with banking, I don't know. But you get the customer ID of the impacted transaction. And here you see the amount. You see it was 500,000 transaction, 500,000 Swiss francs for about 75 fees around this transfer. So it gets all the information to really drill down, and now maybe to have an interview with Peter, asking him how and why he did that, and in what for what needs. So you got the summary here, to input an authorization on that ID. Now, before having an interview with Peter, if Michiko want to have a better understanding of Peter activity, you just remove the filter. As you get all the data available on the big data platform, you see exactly what Peter is doing. You see he's doing a lot of inquiries, looking at customer, a lot of fund transfer, and then a little bit less of other activities like securities and so on. You get a view of the application, the major application he's using. You get a view of the activity he's doing a lot of input, he's doing quite a number of authorization. So now if you just want to look at authorization of record, you can just apply a new filter if you want, and you can see, okay, he's now doing a lot of authorize on fund transfer, account, and so on. So maybe the fund transfer we detected is not the only one that Peter did as a self-authorization fund transfer. So you can really discard, investigate, and get a better understanding of customer activities, employee activities for your forensic needs. So let's look also at more David activity. Don't forget about David, the head of risk, who's more a dashboard addict. He does not really need all this detailed information. He just wants to have a global overview to report for the executive committee. So here, I just kept the filter, but even if David wants to see the details, you can exactly see that Peter did a 4i violation. It is related to a controls about identity theft, so he gets this information straightforward available. But basically, David is more interested into some high-level overview where you see the 26 violation within the bank. You see that Peter is doing a lot of strange things, but for instance, all these users are also kind of doing some search around the customer of the bank, looking at dormant accounts, for instance, looking dormant accounts, working, doing miscellaneous entries on some customers, and so on. So through this dashboard, David, so the head of risk, get a global overview. He can see the trends in regard of control. Every type of control is available here. We can see that the 4 eyes principle we just saw as a violation is basically related to Peter only, and maybe a little bit, and Peter is also doing a little bit of strange activities around transaction compliance. So it seems that 4 eyes violation is only an issue with Peter, where, for instance, on-leave activities, so activities during holidays and so on, is not only an issue around Peter, is maybe an issue around several other users. So in a very quick approach, you get the full understanding of the bank risk coverage related to all the controls that are running on the big data platform. So no more need of 200 people from the first line of defense doing control. They will just review violations that are coming out of all these controls that are running on the background of the software. So it helps first line, and really it helps second line of defense to drill down, to run investigation, to have a dashboard view, and to really understand what is going on. So I know we have a lot of bankers on the line, so let's look at the savings. It's also the interesting part. We did an estimation around savings on control automation. We can easily save 150,000 USD per control just with the time, effort, the manpower you will need from your business line to review 3,000 transactions a week instead of looking at 12 violations. So imagine over 10 control digitalization, you easily save 1.5 million USD per year. And for sure, you reduce your risk exposure, you are much more proactive. And if you think about all the savings, just think about one single fraud case about cyber fraud where you need such a proactivity into control, risk, and so on. We are reaching the end of the webinar. So before jumping into questions, some closing remark around regulatory pressure and the way you can really leverage on technology to ensure that you do not have to run anymore after every new regulation coming in. You can add an automate control like a caps you put on an existing analytics platform. Digitalization, I want to highlight here, is not just for the front office. A lot of people think about digitalization on the front office, but nowadays you can do also so much earnings, savings on the back office side, which is very often the dark side no one wants to touch, but for sure you can really nowadays leverage this type of technology. And it becomes very critical where you think about cyber fraud, such as e-banking fraud, where you cannot just look at paper or screen to find out strange things. You need profiling technology. You need to look at trends. You need to look at behaviors of your e-banking user to be proactive into that. So basically, that was the few points I wanted to highlight today, and I will give back the microphone to Mine if we have a few some questions from the audience.
Thank you very much, Joel. We have indeed a few questions, and we can take some questions now. We have some time remaining. So one question is about the new risks. So we here discuss about cyber fraud, preventing fraud. So the question is around how such a solution could actually prevent new risks, like not discovered before, but it's a new risk. How actually the solution would be able to prevent this kind of new risk?
So basically, with new risk, let's take an example about what we call new would be maybe more on the channel side, mobile banking, fraud, where you may think about SIM swap fraud and stuff like that. With a lot of these risks, the issue is around behavior. So you cannot detect these risks just through a rule. Like it is mainly done on compliance. When on compliance, you look at sanction screening, it's very easy. If it's coming from these countries, it's a hit. It matches the sanction. On new emerging risk, it's not anymore white or black. It's really behaviors. So if you think about mobile banking behavior or e-banking behavior, if suddenly you think about a control where you look at the type of device the customer is using, if you look at the localization, the geolocalization on the map, if you look at his behavior on the e-banking software, if he's never looking at his profile, never changing his password, and suddenly he's connecting from Kazakhstan, changing his profile, opening a loan that he's never doing usually, and doing a transfer. That's maybe a valid user, valid credential, valid identity, but a very strange behavior that needs to catch attention. So I really believe that this type of approach of controlled digitalization and profiling is bringing these capabilities into the loop.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have one more question around technical integration.
Yes.
Like how does it integrate? There was also another question related to this question. Where do you collect information? What about the data,
Yes.
the quality of data? How can we investigate and do further forensics if we have limited data? So if you could just also talk about technical integration and the data part that's
I see a question around the CM solution. Very good question, because indeed it may sound a bit similar on some point. And a question around a SIP trunk. So by SIP trunk, I'm wondering if you're speaking about communication, voice over IP, and things like that. So let's look at integration part, basically. It's true that we are leveraging a lot of CM or log management capabilities. Basically, because we need logs, we need audit trails. A lot of the information that is very relevant for risks is available there. But what we saw is that with standard log management solution, you cover very well, I would say, the IT risk use cases around administrators, around technological risks, around change to database and so on. But from a banking perspective, looking at the IT side is very good, but it's not enough to discover risk. Think about the collusion use cases where, for instance, an IT employee is changing for half an hour a username, I would say access rights to a back office employee to just input and validate transactions. From the IT side, it does not look like a very high risk, changing a role of a user. But when you look at the transaction side, you see that the targeted user is now doing a transaction, is now validating a high-value transaction, and so on. So you need transactional data, financial data, as well as business user activities on e-banking, on channels, on core banking. So indeed, we are bringing a way to mix financial information that will be really needed for compliance control together with, I would say, more the CM or the log management world that is also needed to better understand human behavior. So we are bringing that together, focusing on banking, because as mentioned earlier, data quality is a key aspect, and we need to have a way to quickly capture the right data to solve the right use case. So our goal is not at all to be a log repository to capture everything, trying to find patterns about anything. It's to focus on key control, to reduce risk, to bring proactivity where there is a lot of financial risk, maybe due to technology, but really linking that with financial transactions.
And we have a very good question. So we talked about controlled digitalization helping the first line of defense, second line of defense. But what about the third line of defense? This is a very valid and excellent question. How does controlled digitalization help actually third line of defense?
Yeah, very good question. We do not forget about audit, basically. But with the third line of defense, you get a very quick view about control execution and follow-ups. Nowadays, I suppose you do a lot of control testing, making sure people are doing the control on the first line of defense, making sure the cases are well followed, someone is taking action, you get actionable alerts that are handled by the business side and from the risk side. Basically, now you just need to connect on the case manager where you see all the different activities going on. You see who's not reviewing control, who's reviewing control, what branch are at risk, where you maybe need to do a specific audit. Imagine you have 300 branches. You just want to find out the one where people don't care about first line of defense, where they don't look at incidents, where they don't really manage all these cases we saw earlier. So you will maybe just focus there to see if it's maybe just a training issue, if it's maybe maybe worse, it's maybe just fraudulent activities and so on. So it will really help on reviewing control effectiveness, going into the right type of audit. If you see that all cyber risk control are starting to raise a lot of hits, that's maybe an area where you will focus. So earning time on control testing and then focusing on the hot spot. That would be really the support of the third line.
Thanks, Joel. And I think we can take one last question. There's a question around mobile banking fraud. So would this solution prevent fraud in mobile banking environment? Could you also talk about mobile banking, how it could be helping beating mobile banking fraud, which is very timely topic now?
So I see mobile banking a little bit as e-banking or channel banking. Maybe the major other issue is that the identity of the user is very closely related to the SIM card, to the number you have. On smartphone, then you get better authentication, such as fingerprint, username, password. But if you think about mass market in maybe in Africa, not everybody is having a smartphone, so you have a lot of mobile banking done without proper authentication, and it's mainly the SIM card that acts as point of authentication. So it means, again, that behavior is key. Looking at behavior is a very good way to find out and pinpoint some strange transaction that may lead to a fraud. So I really think that on mobile banking and e-banking environment, the key aspect would be looking at controls that, as mentioned earlier, are not 0 or 1, control that are much more related to customer behavior. And I think that's really the way to go. And if you think about credit cards, they are applying that type of approach since years and years because they were so much hit by fraudulent activities, and the best way is to go through behavioral analysis, and that would be for me, from my perspective, a way to really support mobile banking control and fraudulent activity.
Thanks a lot, Joel. So we are coming to the end of our time, so I hope you have a good understanding of now control digitalization, how it helps, how it will change actually bankers' life. It's not going to be really in 20 years' time. It's really now. It's happening now. Digitalization is here. You can always benefit from it, and it is really changing the shape of the banking industry. And if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to just send us an email or call us. We have the risk experts here who are always available to talk to you personally, answer your questions. Please don't hesitate to get in touch anytime. So we are ending our webinar today, and thank you very much for joining us. And we will be sending you the slides and recording after the presentation after the webinar today. We hope to see you in our upcoming webinar. So we have another one on investment suitability, how we can actually automate also investment suitability. It will be in April with our speaker, Rafael Maia, co-founder and CEO of NetGuardians. So we hope to see you in our future webinars. Thanks a lot, and we wish you a nice day.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.